Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one.
The introduction. In the heart of Willow Creek, a small town cradled between thick forests and rolling hills, the sun began to set later each day, casting elongated shadows that stretched across the cracked pavement. The air was tinged with the sweet aroma of fall, the kind that harkened back to simpler times, a season of changing leaves and nostalgia. But behind the picturesque facade of this tight-knit community, darkness lurked, waiting to unravel lives in its wake. On a cool October morning, the local newspaper's headlines screamed, "Local woman found murdered in her home." The news shook the town to its core. Ava Thompson, a beloved librarian, was found lifeless in her quaint bungalow just before dawn. The details were sparse, but the impact was palpable. Ava was 35, a dedicated member of the community, with her kind smile and warm laughter often resonating through the library halls. Friends described her as a light, one whose spirit could banish the dreariness of a rainy day. As investigators arrived at the scene, they carried the weight of rising suspicion, drawn to small details: a shattered vase on the living room floor, an overturned chair, an open book resting on her late-peached clue, ponderously hinted at a struggle. A desperate burst of violence that belied the peace of the town. Detective Sam Harper, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for shrewdness, found himself confronting the layered intricacies of what had become an unsettling mystery. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a blood-orange hue across the sky, the sight of Ava's home became an indelible reminder. Tragedy knows no boundaries, and sometimes it weaves itself into the very fabric of everyday life. The quest for truth was just beginning, and with it came the stark realization that Willow Creek would never be the same. The victim? Ava Thompson was more than just a name in the local newspaper. She was a fixture of Willow Creek, a woman whose life story was woven through the very fabric of the community she loved. Born and raised just a few doors down from the library where she worked, Ava had a calming presence that made her the go-to person for everyone, from lost children searching for their favorite story to weary adults seeking refuge in the pages of a good book. Her modest home was decorated with bookshelves overflowing with novels, framed photographs of friends and family, and houseplants perched on every shelf. Each plant had a story. Much like Ava's life itself. She often spent weekends volunteering at the local animal shelter or hosting book club nights, where laughter echoed through her living room, mingling with the fresh scent of her homemade cookies. But beneath her genial exterior lay an undercurrent of loneliness. Ava had endured hardships, particularly following her mother's passing 2 years prior, which had plunged her into a somber reflection about connections and purpose. Friends noticed that while she remained patient and kind, her laughter came less frequently, and her vibrant energy dimmed in the shadows of regret and solitude. As the investigation deepened, Detective Harper spoke with those who shared close ties with Ava. They described her as selfless, yet occasionally reserved. A woman who often put others before herself. During interviews, a few mentioned a mysterious figure seen lurking around the library in the weeks leading up to the tragedy, an unfamiliar man whose presence stirred anxiety among patrons. The more Harper learned about Ava, the more he realized how fragile life could be in the face of evil. Willow Creek had lost something irreplaceable, a quiet light that illuminated even the darkest corners of its collective soul. The pressing question loomed. Who could harbor such malice towards someone so gentle? As each revelation emerged, it painted a more complicated portrait of her life, one steeped in connections that could either lead to comfort or reveal hidden dangers. The search for justice had taken on a haunting urgency. The crime scene. The dawn revealed an eerie stillness over Willow Creek as Detective Sam Harper approached Ava Thompson's home. The police barricades shielding the crime scene were a stark contrast to the warm, inviting home that once buzzed with life and laughter. A heavy air of dread settled around the thick crowd of onlookers, their faces some combination of shock and disbelief. This was not how things were meant to be in their serene town. Stepping inside, Harper was immediately struck by the disarray that contradicted the inviting warmth of Ava's personality. The living room glared back at him, a jarring scene of chaos. An overturned chair lay next to the coffee table, an eclectic mix of aroma candles scattered across the carpet. The open book on her lap, the chosen story for her latest book club meeting, was now stained with the grim evidence of violence. The coroner had already been at work, examining the lifeless body draped over the soft surface of her plush sofa. Ava's long hair framed her pale face like a haunting halo, her eyes closed in an eternal sleep, giving no hint to the struggle she must have endured. The room was silent except for the rustle of plastic evidence bags as forensic teams moved methodically around the scene, documenting every detail with meticulous care. As Harper glanced at the shattered vase, he imagined the moment when a broken image of fear or desperation rippling through Ava's last moments. Blood speckled the floor, a stark reminder of how a sanctuary can turn suddenly sinister. He noticed the faint impressions of fingerprints on the book's cover. Could those lead to her assailant, torn between the desires for justice and the instinct to protect the townsfolk from their own shadows? Harper felt an unsettling gravity shift in the room. This murder would echo through the town, and for some, it might reveal uncomfortable truths buried beneath the surface of their idyllic lives. Tension lingered, the malevolent thread weaving through the fabric of Willow Creek. The scent of betrayal growing as if fed by the very air. The investigation had just begun, and already the threads of a larger conspiracy seemed to tug against the fabric of what everyone thought they knew. The early investigation. As the sun climbed higher, shedding light on the haunting remnants of the crime scene, Detective Harper assembled his team for a briefing at the Willow Creek police station. The room buzzed with murmurs, tension heavy in the air as officers exchanged their initial findings. Harper stood at the head of the table, a sense of urgency etched into his features. First on the agenda was the forensic report. Evidence technicians had confirmed that Ava had suffered multiple blunt force traumas, indicating a fierce struggle. The details were grim, but even more troubling was the discovery of a single hair, clinging stubbornly to the edges of the broken Bazea dark strand. Unlike Ava's light brown locks, it could be a critical piece of evidence, but it also hinted at an unknown visitor who had invaded her sanctuary. Let's start by looking into Ava's last interactions, Harper said, flicking through his notes. Reach out to her acquaintances, book club members, and anyone who frequented the library. If someone saw a strange man near her, we need to know. We must trace her connection. The officers swiftly divided tasks, some delving into Ava's past, others combing through library security footage. With any luck, Small details would emerge from shadows cast by whisperers of a now unfathomable peace. In small towns like Willow Creek, familiarity often crowded out the uncanny. Everyone knew everyone, yet secrets were surprisingly adept at hiding in plain sight. As evening approached, Harper visited the library, the site where so many of Ava's moments had played out lost amongst books, surrounded by shared stories. The librarian on duty eyed him warily, sensing something was amiss. With a soft voice, she shared a peculiar observation. Recently mentioned a patron, or a man who lingered beyond the usual borrowing times, often asking odd questions. Harper's instincts prickled as he noted every detail. Who was this man? What interest had he taken in a woman as beloved as Ava? Each answer lay beyond the pages, yet intertwined with the lives of those around him. Harper could feel the weight of the truth pressing down. A close companion to the injustice that had fallen over Willow Creek. The race against time had officially begun, and with every lead, the shadow of a predator drew closer, obscured within the very community that Ava had devoted her life to protect. The dead ends. Days bled into nights as the investigation into Ava Thompson's murder progressed. Yet with each passing moment, the path to justice grew cloudy. Detective Sam Harper felt the frustration gnawing at him like a relentless tide pulling away from the shore. What should have been a clear-cut case of a loved community member, a friendly librarian, becoming a victim of senseless violence, turned into a labyrinthine nightmare. Numerous interviews yielded familiar faces, expressing sorrow and disbelief. Neighbors shared their fond memories of Ava, recounting afternoons spent in her cozy living room discussing classic literature, but none could provide tangible leads. The mysterious man who had been seen lurking about was no ghost. He remained elusive, his identity still shrouded in ambiguity. Even the forensic evidence seemed to have plateaued. The dark hair found at the scene yielded no matches in local databases, and despite their best efforts, investigators could not identify anyone who had reason to wish Ava harm. The library's security footage showed nothing but regular patrons coming and going, to contrast to the chaos that had unfolded just days early. Feeling bogged down, Harper decided to revisit the crime scene, searching for insights overlooked in the haste of the initial investigation. The sensors of his mind attuned to the environment, he walked through the living room once more, stepping carefully over the threshold into the once vibrant realm of Ava's life. He combed through her belongings, examining the tattered leather-bound book left on the sofa, deciphering its meaning, a poignant novel on loss that mirrored what they had all experienced. It was then that he noticed a faint scrape along the back of the sofa, a small perforation on the wood grain, as if something had been levered or gripped there. In a moment of desperation, Harper's pulse quickened, a renewed sense of purpose igniting within him. He called for forensic experts to re-examine the area, hoping they would unravel a thread, the one lead they desperately needed to pull tighter. Yet, as he reviewed the notes he compiled about Ava's life, Harper couldn't shake the feeling of being ensnared in a web of darkness. Every potential lead felt more like a dead end, darkening the horizon of hope. But as long as there were questions unanswered, there was still a fight to be had, a pursuit of truth whose weight pressed on his shoulders like the ominous clouds gathering overhead. Time was slipping through their fingers, and he would be damned if he allowed Ava's story to fade into silence. A break in the case. As the days dragged on, An unsettling stillness fell over the investigation into Ava Thompson's murder. Detective Sam Harper felt the pressure mounting up just from his superiors, but from the grieving community that had turned to him for answer. Just when the anticipation of finding new evidence began to wane, a glimmer of hope arrived in the form of a phone call that would change everything. It was late afternoon when Officer Ramirez burst into Harper's office, a small envelope clutched tightly in hand. "You're going to want to see this," he announced, excitement sparking in his eyes. Inside the envelope was a grainy photograph and a report from the lab. As Harper examined the image, a rush of adrenaline coursed through him. The photograph showed a man leaving the library on a day that aligned suspiciously close to the time Ava had expressed unease over a patron. The man appeared disheveled, wearing a baseball cap pulled low over his brow. But a familiar flash of recognition twinkled in Harper's mind. The same unsettling figure described by library patrons. The accompanying lab report confirmed that the hair found at the crime scene had finally been matched to a suspect, a transient who had been living intermittently in the nearby woods, someone noted for his erratic behavior and known to have a history of altercations. Wilson Pierce was a name that had only popped up fleetingly in their interviews, but the newly evoked tension forced Harper to focus now on this dark figure. Harper gathered his team for an immediate meeting. "We have a lead," he announced, focusing their attention on Wilson Pierce. "Let's dig into his background. Connect with anyone who might have seen him near Ava's home or at the library. We need to understand the dynamics here. The air pulsed with renewed energy as officers sprang into action, determined to seize this new opportunity. In the days that followed, as they uncovered Pierce's past, patterns emerged. Known for his hostile reactions, multiple accounts emerged from townspeople who reported feeling threatened by him, especially women. The deeper they probed, the more a chilling narrative took shape beyond and tangled in the shadows of Ava's life. With fresh urgency, Harper prepared for his next steps, ready to confront the suspect who had invaded their peaceful community. Believing that the pieces of the puzzle were finally beginning to snap into place, the small town that had turned overwhelming with grief began to reclaim its strength as they veered sharply toward justice, the echoes of Ava's laughter urging them onward, from darkness toward the flicker of new hope. A suspect? With the weight of determination heavy on his shoulders, Detective Sam Harper prepared to confront Wilson Pierce, the newly identified suspect in Ava Thompson's murder. The quiet hum of the police station shimmered with anticipation as officers gathered their notes, cross-referencing reports on Pierce's background and any known whereabouts. Their resolve was palpable. They could feel the community's hope mingling with their own relentless pursuit. Pierce had been spotted loitering around the outskirts of town, often visiting a local diner for coffee, but rarely partaking in conversation. When asked about the sights and sounds of the leather-booted figure hunched at a corner table, patrons had recalled unsettling glances, murmurs of intimidation hanging like a shadow. That afternoon, Harper and Officer Ramirez approached the diner, the sun casting long shadows along their path. The bell above the door jingled softly as they stepped inside, drawing the attention of patrons, many of whom were unaware of the undercurrent of fear weaving through their community. Pierce sat at the far end, his face partially obscured by a worn baseball cap. The stubble on his cheeks hinted at neglect that befitted a man lost to the streets, a stark contrast to the warmth Ava evoked. As Harper and Ramirez approached, they could feel the air crackling with tension, with the diner's conversation suddenly muffling under the weight of an unspoken dread. "Wilson Pierce?" "Pierce," Harper announced, his voice direct yet measured, eyes locking onto the man's. Pierce looked up slowly, expression unreadable. "What do you want?" he growled, the reticence in his voice betraying more than simple annoyance. "We'd like to ask you a few questions regarding Ava Thompson," Harper replied, each syllable punctuated by an edge of authority. "You were seen near the library. We know it's been back and forth with your whereabouts while you've been staying in the area. When was the last time you saw her?" At the mention of Ava's name, something shifted in Pierce's demeanor, a flicker of recognition accompanied by flash of defensiveness. "I don't know anything about her," he immediately barked back, fingers twitching restlessly on the table. But the moment hung heavy. Harper could sense the tension behind Pierce's bravado, and like a seasoned fisherman, he knew how to draw the line tighter, waiting for the unsuspecting catch. "Witnesses say you were asking questions about her. Seems you chose a curious target, considering her reputation and death." As Parker's eyes darted around the diner, searching for refuge in the faces of the onlookers, Harper felt the gravity of the situation shift for every passing second heightened the urgency, a growing cacophony in his chest. "You don't need to make this harder on yourself, Wilson," he pressed, determined to peel back the layers hiding the truth. "Talk to us." The suspect hesitated, a monumental decision weighing visible his furrowed brow. But as the clock ticked, the pressures of confrontation dawned on him. Silence engulfed the diner momentarily, heads turning in curiosity, yet with a deep-seated reluctance to involve themselves. Harper knew then that despite Wilson Pierce's rough exterior, perhaps an opening lay just ahead, teetering on the precarious edge of fear and confession. The trial, months after Ava Thompson's tragic murder, the courtroom sat sullenly beneath the harsh fluorescent lights, shadows flickering across the faces of those gathered. The atmosphere hummed with a palpable tension, a collection of stories and sorrow swirling in a tumultuous sea of grief. Detective Sam Harper arrived early, intent on watching justice unfold in the vicinity where Ava had once brought light. As the judge entered, silence cascaded across the room, punctuated only by the rustle of papers and the subtle shuffle of feet as attendees exchanged wary glances. Wilson Pierce, now a shadow of the man who had loomed on the fringes of Willow Creek, sat at the defendant's table. His once unkempt appearance had been replaced with a freshly pressed soutane incongruity that induced an unsettling sensation amongst the onlookers who could not reconcile this facade with the monster they believed had taken Ava's life. The prosecution's case began with a presentation of the evidence, meticulously pieced together from DNA samples to witness testimonies. A stream of emotional narratives flowed, each more heart-wrenching than the last, recounting Ava's kindness, the shock of her absence, and the void left behind. As her friends took the stand, they spoke of their cherished moments, their laughter, and the ache of loss that now stained their life. But as Harper listened closely, a simmering doubt began to surface between the lines of grief. Though the forensic evidence stacked against Pierce painted a compelling picture, the whispers of reasonable doubt echoed like a soft, persistent chant. The defense's arguments began to carve small fractures in the seemingly solid case. "Are we sure this hair actually belongs to the defendant?" questioned the defense attorney, skillfully navigating doubts regarding the collection process, exploiting gaps the prosecution had thought securely filled. Days melted into a blur of police protocols and legal art. Harper focused intently on the witnesses, searching for the glimmer of truth nestled between the conflicting opinions. As the trial pressed on, new revelations emerged. Haunting elements of Ava's life surfaced, that had previously escaped scrutiny, hinting that not all was as it seemed, and the backdrop of idyllic Willow Creek. In the concluding arguments, both sides delivered passionate pleas that resonated through the courtroom. The prosecution painted Pierce as a dangerous man with a history painted in shades of violence, while the defense cast Ava as a flawed figure enveloped in secret friendships and complicated relationships. After days of anguish and heartache, the jury departed to deliberate a countdown that felt interminable for those watching. Hours felt like days as everyone held their breath, waiting for a resolution and praying for justice to be served. At last they returned, solemn expressions betraying no hints of their decision. The foreman rose, gripping the edges of the desk, and declared, "We find the defendant not guilty." Collective gasp erupted, echoing off the courtroom walls, a sound swallowed by the despair that crashed down like thunder. Harper felt as if the floor had dropped beneath him, and anger surged through the shadows of unanswered questions hung heavily in the air, a persistent reminder that the truth had remained elusive. As Wilson Pierce was led away, the weight of flawed justice enveloped the courtroom. The light that had once radiated from Ava now felt distant and dim, as heartbreak intertwined with unresolved rage. Though the trial had concluded, the haunting search for closure loomed larger than ever, a testament to the complexities of truth that would echo through Willow Creek for years to come. The aftermath. The days following the trial stretched into an agonizing haze, a time when Willow Creek grappled with an unspeakable reality. The once vibrant energy of the town had dimmed, leaving behind an unsettled silence that felt like a shroud. Detective Sam Harper wandered through the familiar streets with a heavy heart, burdened by the knowledge that justice had eluded them, taunting him at every turn. Ava Thompson's absence was palpable, a wound reopened with each remnant of the perfume shop where she used to browse, the coffee shop where she'd shared laughter with friends, and the library that still felt like her spirit lingered among the books. In the wake of the not guilty verdict, the community splintered as bitterness mingled with bewildered. Rumors spiraled. Gossip painted the townsfolk in shades of distrust, as some wondered who among them had harbored darkness, a whisper of potential danger looming in their midst. Community meetings formed, led by distraught citizens seeking answers, demanding action and reassurance. Harper found himself at the center of these restless discussions, trying to quell fears while grappling with his own frustration. It was clear that while the case had reached a disheartening conclusion, the fight for safety and closure would not so easily dissolve. He leaned into the conversations, urging openness and vigilance, his own emotions a cocktail of anger and sorrow. Compelled to honor Ava's legacy, friends and family started initiatives to promote safety and awareness in the community. They planned candlelight vigils and support groups, where stories of love and loss poured forth into the night, creating a tapestry of shared grief. Each flickering candle represented not just Ava, but also a deep need for healing, offering solace against the uncertainty that plagued the yet. As Harper dug deeper into the immediate aftermath, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was more to uncover. The case had remained unsolved, the specter of Ava's murderer lingering like a ghost. Even without a guilty verdict, there seemed to be a thread he had missed. a connection that demanded to be explored, one that might lead them to uncover a truth buried within the town's layered history. Driven by the sense of unfinished business, Harper examined case files anew, combing through each detail. He recalled whispered words and subtle hints from interviews, reevaluating the relationships. Ava had maintained the acquaintances she had quietly supported, the friends who could have been more, and those who had seemingly disappeared. It was in that moment of reflection that a name surfaced again: Pierce. Larger than the trial and the verdict, he became the ghost haunting not just Ava, but also Harper himself. Perhaps a darker past threaded through the lives of Willow Creek, and moving forward meant confronting more than just a single perpetrator. It meant delving into the complexities of the human condition and the ways in which good people could harbor monsters unaware. And so, Harper stood resolute before the window at his office that overlooked the quiet street. This was not merely about solving a murder anymore. It had transformed into a pursuit of truth, a promise to Ava, to Willow Creek, that a reckoning would come. Amid the hushed murmurs and flickering shadows of uncertainty, the detective vowed to strive toward a resolution, not just for the innocent life taken, but for the soul the town, desperate to reclaim its hope and be. The journey was far from over, and it began anew with a fierce sense of purpose reigniting within. Reflection. As the seasons changed in Willow Creek, the weight of Ava Thompson's unsolved murder loomed larger than the bare branches that clawed at the winter sky. Detective Sam Harper spent countless nights staring at the evidence board in his dimly lit office, piecing together fragments of a puzzle that refused to fit neatly into place. Every detail felt tethered to a vile life snuffed out too soon, a spirit that echoed in every crevice of the town. Reflection became an unyielding partner for Harper. He had watched the community grapple with their grief, searching for meaning amid chaos. The candlelight vigils had turned into gatherings where hearts poured forth their memories. With every shared story, it became evident that Ava's essence lived on. She was more than just a victim. She was a beacon of kindness that had spurred connection and camaraderie. Harper realized that justice was not merely confined to a courtroom, it wasn't in the light of shared humanity. Each conversation he had ignited resolution among anyone who had encountered Ava. It sparked a movement towards awareness and self-advocacy, pushing the community to safeguard one another as they braved the unpredictability of life.